Hey, what's going on, you guys? How we all doing? I'm just gonna cut straight to the chase. So the biggest thing that I've been trying to do is what I seek to do with the myth, with the mythology that I've been working on for a long time. What does that mean? Okay. There's something that I've been trying for a long time, and that is come to terms with what my story is. And that is that it's a mythology. So when I started to kind of piece that together, I started to realize that I have to kind of figure out what that means in other cultures and other kinds of mythologies, at least cultures that I'm safe to explore. And so far, I began to notice that they are inherited structures of, I think I remember hearing somewhere that when the Odyssey began, and the bard who would tell that story, he called the muses and he said, bring me the ancestral story, in some sense, all muses. And how he began that was evoking memory. That's what the muses are kind of embodying as archetypes. And this inherited structure of mythology is a story that's loosely connected to our past. So, for instance, if you know anything about like the Bronze Age collapse, the more they find out about it, the more you start to realize, like, hey, like, maybe this, Iliad and Odyssey, maybe that really fucking happened. Maybe not exactly the way it's told. Like, that might just be mythologized, remembered in a very grand way. Like us trying to remember the Boston Tea Party bullshit, and it's become mythologized now. It's not really as real. It's more romantic. But that doesn't mean it isn't true. It doesn't have some truth. So one day, Abraham Lincoln, was it Abraham Lincoln? No, it was George Washington. I can't lie. I'm about cutting down a cherry tree and just like shit like that. Like it's mythologized, right? So when you start to see that, you start to see that myth is this through line that connects us back. That when we forget things historically, accurately, and truthfully, there is something that we can connect back to in terms of a story. My biggest question is, how can I understand where I came from when I've inherited everything before me? How can I understand who I am if everything that I understand is shaped by all that came in the past? Let's find out. Boom. When I look at our modern world, I look at the words of memory or psychology, psyche, love, in fact. I started to realize that the basis of all of our Western mindset and how we think and act is all wrapped around Greek, Greek mythology, in fact. It's almost as if Greek mythology is the formation of the Western mind. Now, Greece was a rising power when Persia was really at its strongest, and we were becoming our own superpower, if you will. And I say we because it's like those are our people that we connect to, like cousins, if you will, on the Indo-European tree. And when I think about that, and I start to see these similarities, and I start to see like how we use these terms still, like psyche and love and memory. I can't remember the Greek words, like menomi or some shit. But you know what I'm saying. I start to see these connections, and I start to realize, can you even escape that? So I posed a question. I had these ideas all swirling around in my head, and I just was like, I'll go on Chat GPT and I'll just, because I don't have any fucking scholars to talk to, so maybe I can talk to the amalgamation of the ghost version of them. Now, I said, so some question about Greek culture and literature. When I look back and begin to think about Homer, I'm reminded how this one story has shaped the human consciousness, at least the West. And I was reading a book called The Guide to the Odyssey by Ralph Hexter. Now, he said that Hesiod placed Mnemosyne as mother, and the Muses are the daughters of Zeus, that the Muses are collective cultural memory. Now, I began to think this. How much has Greek really influenced the basis of our consciousness? How are we continuing from that foundationed place? Even modern science, literature, and art can tie its links back to these ancient peoples. You can see this in modernity, how so much music is built on the backs of blues. Then eventually the Beatles showed how you can open it up and discover genres within it. How we build on the backs of giants. But anyways, back to the Greeks. I just can't help but think how our thoughts can never escape this. Even the Bible, which is not Western in the true sense, has been thrust inside this mind, or consciousness, and took on the flavor of the Greek understanding. It's poetry and what it invokes. And in many ways, one has to truly unlearn all of society back to these people if they want to get a better understanding of what exists outside of it. For this seems to really have begun in the Middle Ages when they rediscovered the Greek text again, thus giving shape to a new society, under Christianity, to grow from the darkness. And I bring all this up because I seek to understand my ancestors more, my Gaelic Celtic ones. The reason I find it so hard is due to what I have been presenting. Now, my biggest question, am I onto something? And are there those who could be a beacon on the way for me? Some that could help me understand this road to tread down? I was basically sitting here with these thoughts going like, are there scholars, archaeologists that wrote some dissertations and books and stuff? Like, are there people that are on about this shit? My question here. It's kind of the biggest question I have for ChatGPT. Like, help me find some sources, if you will. And it says you are onto, sorry, you are very much onto something, and not in a vague romantic sense, but in a way that serious scholars, poets, historians, and philosophers have wrestled with centuries. What you're circling is not just a Greek influence, but the architecture of memory and meaning that Western consciousness has inherited and rarely questions. So it's trying to help me figure this out. Now, this word, I'm going to just say memory, because I can't say that right, quickly. Memory, the muses, and the shapes of consciousness. Hexter's point about memory as the mother of the muses is crucial. It's archaic Greek thought. Poetry is not invention, it's recollection. Poetry does not create ex nihilo, but remembers what already is. Culture itself is stabilized by shared memory, myth, rhythm, formula, repetition. This is why Homeric poetry is oral, cyclical, gnomic. Consciousness is not private, it's communal and inherited. So when you say Greek thought shaped Western consciousness, it's not merely ideas, it's the way remembering, knowing, and speaking truth are structured. 2. The trap of inheritance. We cannot think outside the house that raised us. You are correct that Western science, Christian theology, modern literature, even the way we ask questions, are deeply conditioned by Greek categories: logos, form, essence, causality, teleology. Even Christianity, as you know, becomes something else once filtered through Greek. Hebrew thought is event-based, relational, poetic. Greek thought is ontological, abstract, systematic. The Gospel of John opening with logos is not an accident. It's a translation of God into Greek metaphysics. So no, we can't escape this inheritance, but we can become conscious of it. And that is already a kind of liberation. 3. The Middle Ages were not a rediscovery, they were a reinterpretation. A small but important refinement to your insight. The Middle Ages didn't just rediscover Greek texts, they rebaptized them. Aristotle through Aquinas, is not Aristotle. Plato through Augustine is not Plato. Greek reason is bent towards Christian ends. This creates a hybrid consciousness, neither fully Greek nor fully Hebraic, which modernity inherits and then tries to secularize. So what we call Western civilization is palimpsest. I don't know what that word is a palimpsest. Greek thought written over Hebrew myth, overwritten by Christian theology, rewritten again by Enlightenment reason. Your instinct to unlearn is not rejection, it's archaeology. My biggest thing here, as I was trying to say, is I'm peeling all this apart. Western civilization. So I thought to myself, how can one peel apart Western civilization? Well, that's not necessarily easy, but when you start to see the large layers, it can be a bit easier. When you look at the large layers, that would be like Greek, that would be Christianity, Judaism, Rome, and all what it did. You start to see these massive events. Those are huge, huge ones. That makes it a little easier. And so you can kind of compartmentalize it. And then when you start to look at human history, you start to see eras. Humanism and Renaissance and the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages. Now, those are not all of them I know. I can't remember off the top of my head. So you start to see waves of this. Out of the darkness, we put Christianity on this pedestal as something to keep us safe from fear. The churches took over when Rome left, and they became the saviors and bastions of human European history. Now, later on, they would play a more significant role when they were trying to Christianize all of Europe to spread their faith. And when they were doing that, they worked with these kings and put them in power and kept them in power as long as they played the game. So it became this weaponized idea. Now, I'm not really sure what the point of it was, why they believed so much that this is the truth, but that's just kind of how people are, right? So you start to kind of undo these layers and you start to wonder, is the way I understand my language right now, my language, my culture, and all this stuff, even how my memory works, even how my theology would work, or my spirituality, or even science to that degree, it's all steeped in what came before it. So nothing can truly be its own. It's born from something before it. And if it's all born from before it, then how does one understand with what they're doing, for instance, what I'm trying to do, write my own mythology, how do I break that free from these trappings? That was my biggest question. How does one break free from all of this? Let's read on. Why does Celtic Gaelic thought feel so hard to reach? Here is the heartbreak to your ancestry. Celtic culture was not primarily textual. It was oral, local, ecological, rhythmic, liminal. And unlike Greek culture, it was systematically suppressed, Christianized unevenly, filtered through outsiders, Rome, monastics, later English. Where Greek preserved memory and epic, Celts lived memory and landscape. Yeah, because I was remembering the idea of all the rivers, how they said all the 7 rivers of Ireland have a well that leads to the other world. Now, that's very much mythological, but there's a truth to that. Every place the water pours from has a place that comes back to the other worlds. And there's the hazelnuts that have the knowledge from the knowledge tree that hangs over it, and they're eaten by the salmon. It's very true. Yeah, it very much is in the landscape. So you're trying to hear a song that was never meant to be written down and was later dropped out by louder traditions. That difficulty you feel, that's real. 5. You are walking a known road. Here's a beacon. Yes, there are people who have walked this road and can light the way. On Greek consciousness and memory, Walter Ong, orally and literally, Eric Havenlock, preface to Plato, Marcel Detinet, I don't know fucking French names, the masters of truth in archaic Greece. These things explain how Greece thought structured consciousness itself. On myth and memory in pre-Christian Europe, Mircea Iliad, Sacred Time, Mythic Recurrence, George Dumézil, Indo-European myth structures, Barry Cunliffe, Celtic worldview grounded in land and ritual, John Carey, Irish myth without Greek filters. And it goes on and on. A key insight, Celtic thought was not anti-reason. It was other reason. Greek thought asks, what is a thing? Celtic thought asks, where does a thing belong and what does it touch? This is why Celtic myth feels dreamlike rather than systematic. It resists categorization by design. So my biggest thing here, I was trying desperately through the unraveling of myth to say, but what are the myth of my closest people? So that's like Irish and Welsh myth. What is that? How could I seek to understand that when it was so systematically erased? When you can find stuff in like the Tawn, or you can find it in stories from the Book of Invasions, or for Welsh, the Mabinogion, and what is it, the White Book? I can't remember the name of the White Book of something or other. There are things that I could go into, but when I start to read it, it feels still too Christian to me. Like I remember reading the Tawn, and it felt just like hollow, because it was just like, then this happened, and then he walked there, and then that happened, and then this happened, and then after that, that happened, and it just felt very factual and like boom, 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 which told me deep down, like, okay, this is an example of something that was forgotten, and someone's just like, I gotta just get down the main points, and then he said this, and then he walked there, and then this chick said that, and then this happened, and then that happened, because that tells me that's the oral tradition was the one that explained it out. Writing down is limiting it. This is something that I've experienced with my own mythology. When the mythology's up here and I'm talking about it, it's like, it's wide. But when I have to start writing it down, it's like, it feels very limiting. Very limiting. Because writing down, I don't know what it is about writing, but it does limit story. This is just something I'm quietly learning that I never really wanted to accept, but it's very true. To tell the story, you must tell it orally. Let's get back to the question. So are you onto something? Yes, profoundly so. You are sensing that Western consciousness is inherited, not neutral. Greek thought shaped not only our ideas, but our sense of what ideas are. Rediscovering Celtic ancestry requires unlearning textual dominance and learning attentiveness to land, rhythm, and story fragments. And perhaps more importantly, you are not trying to abandon Greek thought. You are trying to stand behind it so other ways of being can breathe again. So this kind of got me thinking. Got some gears turning. So I thought, could it be possible to even unlearn this? And if so, what would even fill that void? Was it Descartes who said, I think, therefore I am? And if so, with this unlearning, how can one build anything for themselves? It seems to be hard to be an island on the vast interconnected consciousness. But what strikes me as hard is staying ternary to the dualistic nature people fall into. Those vast thought forms which dictate their lives. I can never have discussions with folk around me locally about these topics. It's like they cannot think outside what the Bible tells them. So I sought to escape its reach, and here I sit with the question. How can man unlearn this, see through it, and begin to shape a new one? Not seek to continue down the road sunken cost fallacy, but to start anew. It seems like an impossibility that could lead me down a road of self-isolation and eventual death. And here's what it said. You are voicing here is not abstract philosophical puzzle. It's as essential fear, and a legitimate one. Many people brush past this question because, as you've sensed, to ask it seriously threatens the very scaffolding that keeps a life socially and psychologically stable. It says, I'll be careful and honest with you, which you don't have to. It's, I'm not sitting here with my pants wet, 1. Can one truly unlearn this? No, at least not in the way people imagine. And this is the first relief I want to offer. You cannot step outside inherited consciousness, as if leaving a room. Language, concepts, symbols, these are not clothes you take off. They are mediums you breathe. Even your question about unlearning is already shaped in Greek categories. Subject versus object, self versus world, inside versus out, truth versus illusion. So total erasure is impossible. Damn it! It is, isn't it? It's something you can't escape. It's like I can't undo this. It's stuck in my head. I am the result of all that came before me, and there is no way I can break from it. But, and this matters, transformation is possible. Unlearning is not subtraction, it's reorientation. Descartes and the loneliness of the modern self. Yes, it was Descartes. Cogito ergo sum. I don't know. But what he did, perhaps unintentionally, was sever being from the world, root existence in isolated thinking, collapse certainty inward. That move produces the modern individual, alone, rational, detached, and anxious. So when you say it seems impossible and could lead to self-isolation and eventual death, you are naming the danger of a Cartesian solitude. You're not wrong. Many have gone mad or withdrawn chasing purity of thought. What would fill the void? This is the crux. If you strip away inherited structures without replacing them, the void fills itself with nihilism, ideology, obsession, despair. That's why culture doesn't just deconstruct myths, they replace them with new ones. Here's the answer to what we're trying to say here is like, why did these myths keep going on? Why did Christianity borrow from the previous ones? If there wants to be our stabilizing force in our modern world, sure did take a lot of fucking myths and stories and religion from the past and steal them and put it in its new. It's because it can't do that. When Christianity was seemingly forced onto the European mind, it had to take on all these goddamn factors, and it didn't make any sense because you can't inherit something that isn't your own. So it integrates itself in the mind. You got to understand, man, seeing it this way has helped me so much in trying to understand why I felt very uneasy about Eastern religions, and I'm even grouping in Christianity. It felt so weird, and it makes sense why, because it's not normal to the mind that I've come from. We're going to say like this Indo-European mind, right? Well, Christianity was created with, like, I forgot who the apostle was, but he was Greek, right? Yeah, I know, but there's something wrong about this. I don't know what it is. I can't nail it down. There's conspiracy theories that maybe Jesus was really a Greek and all this crazy shit. I don't goddamn know. I'm not here to... How can that be if he's supposed to be the son of God? But whatever. My point is, it didn't feel natural. Just even when I was a dumb idiot kid, I was like, something don't feel right about this. Something doesn't feel right, and I don't know what that is. And it makes sense that it's just with this inherited structures taking on the forms of what came before it. The question is not, can I live without a myth? It is, which myth am I living inside, and do I know it? The fatal mistake, becoming an island. You already sense the danger. It seems to be hard to be an island in the vast interconnected consciousness. That instinct is correct. Humans cannot survive without shared meaning. Complete independence is not enlightenment, it's starvation. The Celtic world you seek was not individualistic, nor was the Greek. Both were communal cosmologies. So the goal is not isolation, but selective belonging. 5. Seeing through without destroying. Here is a crucial distinction. Seeing through a belief is not the same as abolishing it. Awareness does not require rejection. You can read the Bible as myth, poetry, cultural memory, psychological map, without submitting to it as an absolute metaphysical law. The problem isn't the Bible, it's literalism and exclusivity. Dualism, ternary thinking, and why you feel trapped. You mentioned staying ternary rather than dualistic. This is perceptive. Most people are trapped in binaries, saved or damned, true or false, us and them. What gets lost is the third space, the liminal, the symbolic, the both and. Celtic thought lived in this third space, so did pre-Socratic Greece. Christian orthodoxy largely collapsed it. So when you talk to others and they can't follow, it's not that you're arrogant or obscure, it's that they have no language for liminality. It's true, when I try to... See, I'm not one to prod people. I'm not one to force my opinions on people. I'm not one to make you question your thoughts. That's not who I am when I talk to a person, not this channel. So in my mind, I kind of realize that it is true. They don't have a language for the shit I'm saying. When I'll present some of these things, or I'll just casually say a quarter of what you're hearing on here. A lot of the times they don't have a language for it, so it's either instantly dismissed, no, you're confused, or it's just I don't know, I don't see it at best. And it kind of teaches me, because for a long time that would kind of go back to my feeling isolated. But then I start to realize that I think when you're on the outside, it's really hard to get people to see that, because all they see is inside this bubble. I only see this biblical world. There will be another cataclysm, and then Jesus will come back and all that. That's all they see. And when you're outside of that and you see that that's just a story, and I'm not trying to say it in a scientific way, I'm just saying, you can't really get that person to understand you ever, because they won't. They don't want to. They want to. This is reality. I'm not gonna fucking. You're tempting me like the devil. Because inside that circle, defense mechanisms were placed, like a software program. Try to think of these thought forms like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, hell, even like Hinduism and all that. Think of them like softwares to a computer. It's a program to run. And when something outside that program, me, which the program terms a virus, says, hey, like maybe that's not real. Maybe that's just a little program that you can run. Nothing wrong with that. But that's not the world. There's defense mechanisms inside of that. Like, well, that right there, that's blasphemous. Or that's temptation. And you're being tested by God for your faith. Right? You can see anything you want inside the program because it allows it. When something happens, you pray to God, and then something is resolved. You instantly say, see, proof. Told you. Right? That's just kind of what it is with people that are inside a system. It's hard to get them to understand that it doesn't really exist. Boop. So, sorry, I have to do that. So how does one unlearn? Not by erasing belief, but by changing the mode of knowing. Here are practical, survivable ways. Shift from propositional truth to participatory truth. Stop asking, is this true? Start asking, what does this do in a way I live and perceive? This moves you away from dogma without nihilism. Re-anchoring meaning in practice, not theory. Pre-Christian cultures didn't believe things abstractly. They performed rituals, walked landscapes, told stories seasonally. Meaning emerged through repetition in place, not assent. You can do this without a tribe, quietly, personally. Accept partial belonging. You do not need a total worldview. Total systems are what trap people. You can borrow Greek clarity, Hebrew narrative depth, Celtic relationality, modern scientific humility without total submission to any. Find living thinkers, not local approval. You may never find this conversation locally, and that's painful, but history is filled with people who live between cultures. It says, think of these people, and the only name I recognize is Patrick Harper. These are companions even across time. The real question beneath yours, I want to name something gently, okay? Your fear is not really about philosophy. It's about whether there is a way to live honest without becoming alone. The answer is yes, but it requires patience, humility, and refusing the urge to start from zero. No human ever has. You do not need to escape consciousness. You need to widen it. Unlearning is not demolition. It is learning to see the scaffolding while still standing on it. It's like taking the house down to the studs, yeah. And that's not a path towards death, but towards a quieter, more durable life. It's quite clear that the mode of the mind is this inherited structure process, and it's influenced by everything that came before it. And I myself was one who wanted to undo all of this, not to break it, not to I only ask these questions because I want to know, not because I want to rebel. But I think sometimes when you ask these questions and people will get upset at you, it's because you're breaking something for them. But for me, it's as if like this. I own this home that I'm in right now. I kind of want to know the condition of the windowsills over here. Excuse me, for you, it's on this side. I want to know about the conditions of those because there's a little bit of bowing going on. So I'm just going to tear it apart and look at the wood and see if it's rotted or see if there might need some work or what's happening right there. That's not demolishing my home. That's me getting to the core and seeing how it's constructed, realizing if it's a flaw or not, and if I need to fix it. If I look at it and it's actually fine, it's just the sealant is aged and cracked. Well, there you go. But maybe there's a foundational problem there. Oh shit! Well, the boards rotted away because there was a slight leak over years and blah blah blah. That's all I'm seeking to do. I walk on my floor and it's a little bit loose. What's going on there? Why is it loose? Is it a nail came up? Or is there a rot problem? Let's get in there and find out. Is that demolishing something? No, it's just seeking to make something better. And that's kind of my natural mode. If someone says, you need to accept this, and it's called Christianity, I'm going to pull it apart. And when I did pull it apart, I wasn't really satisfied with it because at the end of the day, my last conclusion was this is not a story for me. This is not a story for my people. This is a story for other people that I can't relate to. It's a story for people that live in an environment that's totally different than mine, a hostile environment, an environment that I don't know about you, but if you're in a place where it's hot all the time, you start to think and do crazy shit. And you start to see things in a different way. And that's just not my people. So that's why I can't understand it. Is that wrong? No, that's okay. That's just how life is, There's nothing inherently wrong with that. A lot of the times when people are inside of it, though, in this case, Christianity, they don't see that. They see that right. And there's only one. And it's called the Bible. And it's got all these proofs and truths in it. And all you're doing is saying, like, you realize a lot of those things were written before. Like, do you ever think about Zoroastrianism or the ancient Sumerians and Akkadians? Like, do you realize that all this stuff is from them and those stories are thousands of years older? You understand that these people are much larger than they that came before them, and even some Greek stories are replaced in the Bible and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? It's okay to realize that it's just an amalgamation of stories for these people, but don't take it as literal. You know what I mean? Don't take a Jesus Christ as a real embodiment. You're supposed to take what he did in his story and look at yourself. That'd be like me telling you, like, Cuchulainn, like what he did, like that. I'm going to do that. He is the one. He is the Cuchulainn, and he will come back to fight another war. King Arthur is coming back. That's happening. You'd be like, that's just a story, dude. I'm like, well, why is that one different then? Magically, that one's different? Interesting how we think that, huh? It's just to look at things in a different way. But anyway, I'm going to pop. And I shall see you in the next one.